This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
One thing I learned years ago from watching somebody do it is they took a basic piece of paper and they took one of those clear envelopes and they put it on the windshield of a car with tape on it. And every time they put a part in that car, they wrote it down. If they went and worked on that car for 2-3 hours as a part came in, they wrote down 3 hours, did this. When your customer comes in and he says to you, hey, what's my bill, man? Oh, that's $4,000. Oh, my God, $4,000. You said it was going to be around $2,000. Yeah, but remember that conversation we had where you said, oh, throw this in, throw that in, throw this in. If you look at this piece of paper, see here, that. As soon as your customer sees why you're charging him, how much, he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. I got it.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now. I'm here with John Veloso, the founder and the go-to guy at K-Tuned. So when you got a problem at K-Tuned, you're the guy that they have to come to, huh?
Well, I'm technically not the guy that you would get on the phone. We pretty much got we have the right people to handle that honestly are better knowledge than I am. More or less most of the time when people ask me, I really got to think about it because once I've developed a product, I move on. And so I really kind of forget a lot of stuff that we do. But we got a team of good guys that can usually answer anybody's question. But usually internally, I'm the go-to guy.
So K-Tune's your baby.
Yes, it is.
Tell us about yourself and about K-Tuned and how did it all get started? And what's your background personally? Take us all the way back to when you were a kid.
Well, you know what? I got a short memory for most things, and actually, I'm not sure if you know Marco from Magnus, but he always laughs about this because I can never remember people's names, and he's not far from me, so we do lunch all the time. It's kind of like a break for both of us. We just go for lunch at least once a week, and whatever, and just complain to each other or thrash each other, motivate each other, right? Or or pick each other's brains type deal sometimes. But he's always making fun of me. He just looks at me like you can't remember. It's kind of like that guy, the guy who knows this guy. Well, I can't remember both names, so I get nowhere, right? So now thinking about when I was a kid, you know what? I know I always had a passion for cars. I remember as a kid cutting certain things out of catalogs and stuff like that, pictures of cars that just kind of got me. It's funny because a couple of years back I went through a little catalog I had that I saved pictures, and there was shift knobs in there, and for whatever reason I guess I found that cool, like a Mercedes shift knob or that type of stuff, because I'm 45 this year, so you're going back to when I was looking at car stuff. It was 77, 78, it's probably the earliest I started looking at that stuff. But I don't know, I guess as soon as I was old enough to drive anything, meaning a lawnmower, I started getting into cars. My father owned a paving company, so there was always a lot of equipment to be driven. So I think maybe that's why I got into more, the motorsports for me was driving. And then, my dad had a big workshop. He had friends that would say, hey, can I store my car in your shop? They would say, yeah, no problem. Well, here I am, 11 years old, and I'm like, that'd be really cool to drive because there's nobody around. So I would literally go for a ride. I taught myself how to drive stick and was basically driving on the road. I think my first on-the-road car was basically the Trans Am. I think it was an 80s Trans Am, the black with the fire chicken on the hood.
Yeah, the gold one.
Yeah, basically it's the whatchamacallit car from the movie. Smokey and the Bandit car.
Right.
So I basically learned how to drive on that car. So I think that kind of always got me into it. When I hit, 13, I got into dirt bikes, ATVs. That always kind of stayed with me. I sucked at school. All I cared about was girls and driving, right? So I basically come home, hook up with my buddies, go meet up with them, and we would just go riding. So we didn't, we are in Canada, so we have winters. So in the winter, we'd go snowmobiling. So there was always some type of motorsports. We were always tinkering with stuff. So I think that's how my passion really started. And then think by the age of 14, 15, my brother started getting into cars. I have two older brothers. One's first sports car was a 911 Porsche, and the other one was a Prelude. So I kind of got the taste of the exotic, and I got a taste of the reliable Honda. And my brothers were all about cars like we were. We always paid attention to cars. We were lucky enough that when we started looking at cars was the 80s. And the 80s is when all the new stuff came out. Like you had the 930s, the Testarossas, the Lamborghinis, like all the cool cars that we're using in the movies, they all kind of came back in the 80s. So we grew up around that era. So my brothers and I we really appreciated cars. Like we were just like, oh, look at that thing, and that's crazy, and this and that. And we see some guy driving a crazy car, and we're like, wow, it's so much money. We're like, good for him. We wonder, what does he do, to afford that? And it's kind of like being proud of people you don't even know. Like, good for you, right? And later on in life, you learn that, some people pay for those things the wrong way, but some guys actually work for it.
Sure.
But
tell us a little bit about kind of how you went from, high school and then on to, career and eventually to K-Tune. Like, what's that all look like?
Okay, so again, my strengths were never in school. I was never diagnosed with ADD, but I'm certain I have a little bit of it, and I think most of the guys in our industry, I'm sure if we wrote a test, we'd all have a little bit of it in it.
You think it's a strength or a weakness?
I think it's a strength. I think it's a multitasker, but you just got to learn to manage it. But if you really got to know how to use it, and for me, I'm just a bit of a scatterbrain. If something doesn't get my attention, I don't get it. So if if it's a problem, I get it because I want to learn it and figure it out. So that's always been my strength. But when I went to school, it sucked for me. So bad that my teachers, one thing that I was always good in school was leadership. And I always got put into leadership roles, like captain of the basketball team, captain of volleyball. I moved on to high school and it got more competitive. It was like social. It was like they sent me to leadership camp. And I was like, really? I'm going to leadership camp with a bunch of browners and I'm the only guy who's like a general kid, that was taking shop and stuff like that. I was like, okay, whatever, right? But I guess I always found a sense of humor and everything. So I would just kind of keep bringing people together with my sense of humor. So they sent me to that. But the same teacher, which was my French teacher that nominated me to go do that, also at the same time called one of my parents in and said, listen, I was in grade 10. She said, you know what? School is really not for your son. He just doesn't get it. So I was like, it's hard to explain to your parents, that wants you. All they care about is you going to school, getting an education, so you could, get an easy job versus, my parents are old school, so they worked. They worked two jobs a day, to get where they kind of were, being landed immigrants and stuff. It's always an uphill battle, right? Trying to, make ends meet. So they're kind of like, go to school. And all I cared about was cars at that point. I think I was like 16. I think I had my license already, so I was like 16. And my mom and dad just said, listen, if you're not going to stay in school, that's cool, but you're going to work. Like, you leave school today, you're going to work tomorrow. So pretty much I went to go work for my father. And at that point, he had another company, had a bricklaying company, and I started off as a laborer. So really nothing to do with cars, but, within a year I was operating one of our heavy forklifts and repairing it. So that's as much as I really got on to hands-on. In the winters, again, we had winters, we didn't do much bricklaying, so I would work on my cars at that point. So basically, in a nutshell, I finished grade 10. So I didn't go to college, didn't go to university, just didn't have, it's hard to explain, I just didn't have the patience for it. There was nothing there, like, I couldn't relate to anything. I remember being, I was making a part for another company, and I was working on my Bridgeport mill, and I had to put 6 holes in a circle, and I'm sitting there going, okay, I got 2, or was it 8 holes? So I can't remember what it was, and I got 4 holes, no problem. It was like one at either point in the circle, and I was like, okay, I got to put a hole here, and I'm working on my screen, and I'm looking at it as I'm setting up numbers, I'm doing math, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, if you do this minus that minus this, it works. So my buddy comes in, and I said to him, hey, I just figured this out. If I do, this plus that, I get this number, and I can put this hole here, this hole there, and that hole there. They're all equal. And he looks at me and he goes, well, that's pi. And I'm like, huh? And he goes, that's pi. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, whatever. But to me, I was like, I just figured out how to do this. So later on in life, I explained, a couple of my friends, I never knew what pi was when I was in school. And I was like, why do I need to know that? But as soon as I had to figure something out, I figured out pi on my own by just mathematical equation. So Yeah, I think of
context. Yeah, context was everything.
Yeah, it basically was. If I couldn't look at it and try to figure it out, I didn't get it. But if I was always very hands-on. As a kid, I was always very, gifted in making stuff by hand and liked the challenges, and nothing was never not doable. As a kid, which most of us are. We all figure it out. We all get it done, right? Some guys are better at making it look prettier, you know what I mean? And some guys just get it done and win races. And sometimes it doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to, make it to the finish line.
Sure. So you're working as a bricklayer. And then what?
I was a laborer. I was a laborer till I was 23 years old, 22, 23 years old. When I used to do a lot of buying and selling. I learned the art from my father of, having money in your pocket always makes, have a dollar turn it into $2. So I needed something to make some money. So I landed into that because when I was into dirt bikes and ATVs, I'd buy one for a good deal. And I'd get bored with it, and I'd sell it. Well, I'd pay, like, say, I don't know, $1,500. Next thing you know, somebody wants to buy it off me because I'd clean it up and, make it look good for $2,000. So I made $500. So for my off season, what I used to do is I used to buy and sell all the time, and I made good money at it, and I learned a lot, from on off-road vehicles, and then into cars. When I got my license, I'd buy a winter beater because I always had a nice car for the summer, and I'd always have another car like a Honda or a Toyota or whatever for the winter, and I'd always at the end of the year make money when I sold the car. So a buddy of mine that used to export motorcycles to Europe asked me if I wanted to come work for him. So I went to go work for him as a purchaser, and I remember I worked for him for, I think it was just under a year, and I purchased 430 motorcycles from him. And literally I would go to your house and you would have a motorcycle for sale, and I would negotiate with you and load it up in my truck and drive away and take it to the shop. After a while, it was just hard to explain to people, like, why do you have 3 motorcycles in the back of your cube van? So I would have to lie all the time. I was like, I can't do it anymore. I can't lie. Like, it's getting too hard to look at people. You know what I mean? And sometimes my boss would say to me, he wants $4,000, just go pay him $4,000. But to me, it was so boring. So I'd want the challenge of, I'll give you this, I'll give you this, I'll give you that, and getting a better price for the owner. But after a while, it was just like, it was too much lying. I couldn't do it anymore. So I stepped away from that, didn't know what I was going to do, and what was it? I went to work for Honda manufacturing, worked for them for a while, found that it wasn't for me, and that was more looking for something stable than anything, than always kind of doing this or that. I think I was still trying to find where I wanted to be. I knew where I wanted to be in Honda, but when I was there for a year, I looked at how hard it was going to be for me to get to where I needed to be. I didn't have the education. To get there easily, because it was all about education. So after a while, I learned all my jobs as above line speed, because again, challenged, just do it as fast as you can. And I just one day just said to my, my team leader, I just said, it's not for me, man. I said, like, this is where I want to be. How long? And he's like, dude, you're going to be here forever. And I'm like, all right. So my brother works for Honda Manufacturing. He hooked me up. So I basically told him, I can't do it anymore. I know you'll probably be pissed off. I've only been there a year, but I just, I didn't miss any time or whatever, but I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. So I needed a game plan. One of my buddies had a mechanic shop. He had a unit behind him that was available for rent. And he goes, hey, why don't you take that place? There used to be a cleanup shop in there. We know you like cars. Your cars are always clean. You could just, open up that shop. You're going to get his old business because he's not there anymore. He's moved away. And I thought, okay, I can do some buying and selling, and I can do some cleaning cars, and I'll find that happy place of what I want to do. So within 6 months, I found that I didn't want to buy and sell anymore because I just couldn't do it. I was literally burnt out because I would still do it on the side. And everybody was kind of following what I was doing. It's funny. You tell people what you're doing, and next thing you know, they copy you. So it was just like, I was like, you know what, man? Our friendship means more to me than that. You have it. It's all yours. I'll go find something else to do. So literally I was basically just working on cleaning cars, and slowly, because now I'm 26 now, so this is 96, I always helped guys out with their cars, building their cars for them. Because up till then, I think it was on car 4 or 5 that I, heavily modified. And for me, heavily modified, it was always looks with a little bit of go. So everybody started coming to me, hey, John, you know what, can you get me this? Can you get me that? And I was like, I got all my old contacts where I buy my stuff from. Sure, I'll bring it in, make a couple bucks off it. Well, it got to the point that a couple of, like, let's say a Motivicity or a Keystone approached me and said, hey, do you want to sell some product here? We got nobody in this area. I said, listen, man, you're buying 10 grand. I can't do 10 grand. I don't got that kind of money. I don't know what to buy. I buy light bulbs, right? Everyone needs light bulbs, but I'm like, I don't know what to buy, right? And he looked around and he looked at my car that I had built, and at the time I had my 4-wheeler there, my Sea-Doo. Everything was heavily modified. Like I remember my snowmobile, which, a lot of guys that if you're not around snow or like snowmobiles boring. If you saw my snowmobile, it was like the wildest thing, like twin pipe, chromed, headlight conversion that I modified from a newer sled. The thing was just like, it was like the bomb. So he saw all that stuff and he goes, this guy's going to go somewhere. So I think he kind of saw more than what I actually saw. And he goes, $500. Order $500 worth of stuff. If you don't buy it, you can return it. In 6 months, I sold 20 grand worth of stuff. So he knew something that I didn't know, right? So, and I just kept, I'd make $1 and reinvest it. Where a lot of shop guys, they open up a shop and they build a car. They feel that how I'm going to get my business is I'm going to build a car and I'm going to go to the track and I'm going to kick everyone's ass and all the business is going to come to me. And I knew that I don't really feel that's 100% how it works. So I always stayed away from that. What I did is I helped everybody. So I built a lot of cars. I would charge guys, but if I did, let's say I did 100 hours labor on a guy's car. That's more, but let's say 50 hours labor. He would always get an extra bonus, 15, 20 hours for free. Like I would really spend that extra time to make it perfect. Because every time I saw that car, it had to be beautiful to me. It had to be like, wow, who did that? I wanted the pat on the back from people. As much as I don't like it, I wanted to hear it from other people that, I went here and these guys were crazy about the car. Guys were taking pictures and this and that. And I was like, oh, it's cool, right? So I always went the extra mile. Because of that, the business just grew. Like there was literally in 99, 2000 around there, just around the Fast and Furious days were starting, there were guys rocking my stickers that they didn't get from me. They actually had people making them and putting them on their cars. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I was like, cool. But I used to build a lot of show cars and go to shows and we'd kick everybody's ass. We just built the right car, the right look, and it was just timeless. Like I still got a couple of guys that own those cars from back in the day, and when you look at them, you can tell they're, like 99 2000 cars, but they're kind of timeless, which they still, I never went with this is trendy, you know what I mean? I kind of always went with I would drive that car. So because of that, we did good, but I got bored really quickly, and first customer came in and wanted a turbo kit. I said, I'll do it at cost. I just want to learn how to do it. So we did a turbo kit. I think I did a drag turbo kit from back then. I think it was Dave from Blocks that was running drag. Did one of his turbo kits, bought lots of his kits back in the day. And the only thing was I had to modify everything on those kits because they were very, this kit will fit kind of like 10 cars, right? So after a while, you got to know what you had to modify to make it work. Well, what I started doing is I started buying, sourcing silicone locally from truck shops. Tubing, back then somehow I got involved with Martin from MBRP, where somehow he needed a Corvette to do some testing to build an exhaust. And one of my customers had one, and I hooked him up, and we became friends since then. And Martin's not far from here. He's like 2 hours away up north. He does all the truck stuff, MBRP exhaust for the diesel cars or trucks. Okay. So anyways, I was getting tubing from him. I'd say, Martin, can you get me 90 degree, 30 degree tubings, whatever. So I'd buy a box of them at a time. And when I started doing that, I didn't realize, but it was cheaper to buy in bulk than it was to buy one or two. So I'd always buy 5, 10, whatever. Because for me, for my mind, the way it worked was always, it's cheaper to buy by the dozen than it is to buy one at a time. And I will use these. I will sell them. So I started selling a lot of stuff for turbo kits back in the day when there was nobody offering anything. So,
and where are you selling them at? You're selling them locally?
Just locally, we started racing. So I kind of skipped from one point to the other. So 99 2000, we were doing a lot of show cars. I said to a couple of my guys, a guy that used to work for me by the name of Sean Green, which if some guys followed the magazine back in the day, he was an editor for like Modified, PAS, all that. He was like he was the lead editor or whatever. I said to him, Sean, how do I get into drag racing? How do I get into, how do I build promote my business? Because you got to remember, I'm in a rural community. I'm in a small little town of like 15,000 people. So, but we're building these kick-ass cars that when we...
Let me ask you something. How did you get in touch and meet Sean Green?
Sean, okay, so right next to my town was a town called Newmarket, which is a larger town, like 150,000 people. And there was a group of guys, which, like Sean, one of my buddies, Jim Edwards, Mark Kulak, all those guys were very intelligent guys. We're all in the social media as it was exploding of, internet and this and that. They're all very, very car guys, but very geeky type guys that they were into everything that was going on the internet. And I wasn't. I sucked at that, right? So they were basically telling me, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. Okay. So they were like, I said, who's the fastest guy? Who needs help? And they said, well, this guy. And I said, help meaning financially. Because I figured I got to pay someone to put my sticker on their car, right? Because to get rolling, what I need to do, right? So here I'm just doing, bolt-on 7 PSI turbo kits for street guys, which they're more than happy with. Car looks good, goes fast, it's great. Enough to turn a big heavy wheel, so everybody's happy. But now I'm going to the drag strip, and I remember the first time I went, and I think it was like 2000, and I saw these guys, like a guy in an EG busting 1120, and I was like, what the hell? I'm like, where did that come from? I'm a rotary guy, okay, so I have an RX-7 turbo. Every modification you could do to it, larger turbo, everything. The thing kicks ass. So when I look at these cars, I'm like, I know what's in them. How the hell are these cars going so fast, right? Because I know how to make a rotary go fast, but I'm like, a little Honda, I'm like, I know we do like 7 PSI, 10 PSI is the most I had done on a stock motor. And I'm like, oh, what kind of power are these guys making? Oh, 450. I'm like, wow. So anyways, I got pointed to the direction of a guy by the name of Mike Palagian, which back in the day, there was an A&E video that came out on street racing. And it was all about this guy, Mike Palagian and this other guy. They were going to street race. And the whole documentary is about these two guys and their race that they were going to have and trying to meet up. And they're basically, while they're filming the documentary, they're going to all the hangouts where all the cars are going. Like, this is where it all started. You know what I mean? On the East Coast anyways for us in Canada. It was really big here, street racing. So they did a documentary on it. And, I think it was a school thing that did it, but it took off. They sold it to A&E for a bunch of money, and it was big business back then. And this was just before Fast and Furious. So anyways, I approached Sean. I said, Sean, you need to talk to this guy, get him to come down here, whatever. I want him to see what I'm about, what I do. I'm pretty proud of everything I did at the time. And guy comes down, and he's kind of like, pretty serious guy or whatever, and, kind of one of those guys that he's pissed off at you, and he's never met you before type deal. So, but he has one fast car, and a lot of guys give him a lot of respect because he's kicking ass on the street constantly, right? Because it was a street car that he used to run, but it was also a track car. And that car back then was like, I don't know, I think it was like 1140s, something like that, which is pretty fast back then for a little EG with a big turbo on it. So he came to visit me, and I said, listen, I want to help you out. I want this. I want my name on your car. This is exactly what I want. I know you need some stuff for your car. What do you need? So he goes, I need this, that, whatever. So I literally threw him $2,000 cash. And I said, here. And he looked at me like, holy shit. You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, you need money to go fast. I'm making money off guys like you. So here you go. Go faster. Go buy what you need, right? So he said to me, I remember in the conversation, he said to me, he goes, oh, that's, cool, thanks, this and that. Let's just get one thing straight. And this guy's like, 6'3", 300 pounds, big freaking guy, very intimidating. Just, I'm just going to let you know, you're never going to touch my car. I was like, all right. I was like, that's cool. Kind of think about it. I'm like, that's cool. Well, let's go ahead 6 months later. I was the guy taking trannies out of his car. I was the guy changing oil pumps in it. I was doing everything on the car. So first time we go to the track. Now listen to this. So we go to the track. Everybody's thrashing me. They're like, oh, it's a big sticker on the car. Back then we were known as ETD, right? ETD Racing. So big sticker on the car. Who's these guys? They're show car guys. Because people knew who we were, but now they're thrashing, right? Because they're like, these guys aren't, what are they doing at the track? They need to be in the show department. So I take it personal. Right? My guys are telling me this, and I'm like, fuck, man, like, that's not cool, right? So whatever. So we had a customer's car that was there that was hitting the front. It was an EG, and I wound up buying the car from the kid, taking the motor out of it, lending it to Mike at that time for his street car, because we took his race motor out of his car, and because he just didn't want to use it, run it on the street anymore. And I built a full-blown race car. First one in Canada, ever. Nobody had ever done it. The thing was like the badass. So what I did is I took a show car and a race car, and I mixed them together. It was just flawless, like in every way. We actually made a GSR dashboard in rolled aluminum. It just looked so badass, right? So we took it out. Right. Nobody knew about the car. We were building it. Back then, we did like MR10 glass, which if you're a NASCAR guy, that's what they use for Lexan for the NASCARs. I ordered like 2 sheets of the shit. Cost me almost $1,000 and hand cut every piece for it. And if you looked at it, it looked like real glass because I looked at it like, hey, I got to put a dome on this. How am I going to do it? I literally grabbed the stock glass, laid it over top, laid the MR10 over top of it, and put weights on it and trimmed it all so it would match the contour and everything. Like it was just like show car / race car. So anyways, we went to the track that year. Fastest we went was like 10:10, I think it was, and we never lost a race. We were undefeated. We didn't end the year being the fastest. I think someone went like 990 or something like that at the end of the year. But we went to almost every event, and everybody we matched up, we kicked their ass. So I was pretty proud of that.
Right.
In the future, things didn't work out because you know what it's like. Partnerships usually in life are good for one thing, and that's marriage. And even that's tough enough. Didn't work out. I moved shops. There's a lot of promises that were made to me that weren't fulfilled, and I'll leave it at that. And we basically, Mike and I parted our ways. I kept the car because the car was mine. I gave him his engine back, whatever, and moved on. This is when Vibrant Performance, which I'm sure everybody knows Vibrant Performance, they approached me. They were building a CRX race car.
What year is this?
So this is 2003. So we did, in between all that, and again, I've heard some of your podcasts and stuff. I know some guys just drag it on. Some guys are quick and short to the point. I'm trying to be quick and short to the point, but I'm leaving a lot of meat and potatoes out. When we were doing the whole Mike Palgin car, we had the fastest street cars came out of my shop. Nitro Civics, Turbo Civics, people are going to laugh, fastest Miata in the world back then. With a lot of Honda parts, like a lot. It was like we would look at this little, this little Miata with a 1.8 in it that we swapped, and we were like, how can we make this work? I think it looks similar to what's on a Honda. Let's put it on it. Let's see if it works. And we got this thing down in a street class car. So the car was 2,700 pounds. This thing did like religiously 11 ones all day long, with a lot of Honda parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. But anyway, shit like that. We did a lot of that stuff back then. We were always at the track and, still trying to run a business and stuff. But 2003.
Right. And the business at that point is mostly service, or are you selling parts or both?
Just selling parts. That's all I'm doing.
Just selling.
Yeah.
So people can't come to you and say, hey, install this engine, or hey, do this turbo kit.
No,
you're not a service.
We're doing we're doing lots of that. We wouldn't do your brakes for you. If you said, hey, I need brakes, we wouldn't do that. If you wanted a big brake kit, we would do that. If you wanted like GSR swaps, we were doing those left, right, and center. A lot of suspension, rim, wheels, tires, all that. Basically everything, even building motors. We started building motors at that point. So 2003, we moved a little closer into the city, which for me was hard because I'm a small town guy. Now I'm into the city where, it's hard to trust certain people in the city because, a small town guy, you trust everybody because you know everybody. Big city, everybody wants to screw each other. So we went there. We didn't know a lot of people, whatever. We had our customer base that were coming to us because we were closer now. Vibrant. Somehow we started talking to Vibrant. They had this car that they were building, which was a CRX. This is 2003. They needed help. I guess one of their main guys that was working for them that was putting this together, like their car, left the company, whatever, went on to something else. So they got a car, which they, I guess they got a lot of free parts for or whatever through people and certain commitment that was done. The car had to go to the track. So here we get this car. We're looking at it going, we're turbo guys. We're not all motor guys. So I'm like, can we put a turbo in here? Because we're the fastest right now. We're the most reliable. We know how to make it work. They're like, well, we've promoted it as an all-motor car. We want to keep it as an all-motor car. We're like, all right, I guess we're learning about all-motor. So back when I was working with Mike Paladin's car, we hooked up with this guy on the West Coast, which was Kirk Gordon, KG Precision. He was a sponsor of our motor back then. He built Mike's motor. He taught me everything I needed to know about turbo motors and stuff back then and building them because I built a lot of my turbo engines. And so he was kind of getting into the all-motor stuff, and he helped me with our first motor. Well, anyways, we whipped that together. Back then it was basically an LS VTEC. Went out. It was so disappointing because there was like no rush, no pull, no nothing. And we basically, that's how we started in the all-motor thing. And slowly we figured shit out and, kept moving forward and whatever. We broke basically every Canadian record we had to at the time. Not to say there's a lot of cars here, but, back then all-motor was really competitive for us. Like we had 12, 16 car field. So it was pretty good. But you know what? It's a short season. You're talking like 5-6 month season of good racing weather. So we started working with Vibrant. Every time Vibrant would come over, I'd say, this is how I'll sum it up how the relationship started in 2003. The guys would come over, great guys, by the way. and putting their car together, and I'd say, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. Well, all the shit that I was selling, like silicone tubing, flanges, this, that, and whatever, and I was making some money on it. I wasn't getting rich over it, but paid some bills. I was like, you need to do this, guys, because there's a big void for it. So slowly I started educating them on turbo. Well, back then they were doing like intakes, exhausts, strut tower bars, shift knobs, right? Because that was the rage. Everybody was kind of doing it. 2003, it was a shitstorm for everybody, right? Because all the shit was coming from Taiwan, China, whatever, and everybody was just, hurrying it out on eBay or wherever. So all the big companies were like, we're not selling anything anymore. Not only that, the big guys are sending stuff back. So it was hard for a lot of companies back then. So when I was telling them, you need to do this, you need to do that, like we were making black mufflers in 2002, 2003, where we were taking like a MagnaFlow muffler and putting a quick tip on it, spray painting it flat black for our street racers so they wouldn't get nailed. And it was kind of like, you need to make this. And they looked at us like, really? That's like everybody wants shiny right now. And it's like, well, that's what we're doing. Well, anyways, 3 years later, someone else did it, I guess on the East Coast, and people paid attention that it was popular enough. And now there's black mufflers everywhere.
Yep.
Right? And they're down and dirty, cheap, and they work, right? Versus the chrome, right? Or the
trying to fly under the radar for sure.
Pretty much, yeah. It's all stealth, right? So anyways, we helped them back then with their product line, racing their car at the same time. It was like daily conversations, educational for them. And I guess they didn't even know they were educating me at the same time about business. So I was helping them with products. They were helping me with business and how things really work. So it was a win-win for both of us, and we built a good relationship. I think it was 2007 or 7. They asked me to come work for them in the office because I was doing so much of it outsourced for them, and we had stopped racing. I'd had my daughters, and life was starting to just wanted to slow it down a little bit, and I guess that I wasn't in touch with them as much, and they were like, okay, we need him here. So they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I went in and worked on their product line from, I think it was like 2007, 2008, something like that, all the way up till about 2 years ago when I left. So while I was working on that company, like working for them with their product line, before I went to go work for them, yes, it was 2008. I'd already been working on K-Tune for about 2-3 years. So we kind of went from ETD racing to K-Tune. We always kept ETD, but when I first came out with my first K-Series part, which was our water block-off plate with the alternator relocation kit, was basically, it was ETD. So if you have one of the original ones, it says ETD on it. But quickly I learned that everyone used to get that name wrong. They used to call it like instead of ETD, it was EDT, and I was like, this shit ain't going to work. And I was like, you know what, now's the time. Now's the time for me to change my name. So that's when I came up with K-Tune. Because I was like, the motor's K. I always loved the sound of tuned. I remember there was a company that did exhaust, and they were called Tuned. And I thought, that's a cool name. And so I did K-Tuned.
So when did you make the transition to K-Tuned, and was it always your vision to be like a parts manufacturer? Was that the goal?
No, it was a fill-in. Like I think we were doing traction bars in, I don't know, 04, 05, where we landed on a bunch of raw parts. We were helping a guy unload that was making parts for another company, which I won't mention their scumbag names, but anyways. So I felt bad for this guy. He got stuck with a bunch of parts, and I said, we sold a couple of them. One of my guys was like, hey, I'm going to put these on eBay so we get rid of them, right? So we had like 3 or 4 of them kicking around. He goes, can you get any more of these? And I'm like, I think so. I can call the guy. So I went by, bought 5 more, sold those, and all of a sudden I said, hey, can you give me a deal if I buy 10? Better deal, 20, better deal. So I unloaded all of his stuff for him because this guy was not a car guy. He was a manufacturer. He had the brains to manufacture stuff, but not to sell stuff. The guy that was the brains to sell stuff basically told him to go screw himself and decided that, hey, me, going solo will make more money than split in half with you. So he basically screwed the guy. So I felt bad for the guy, right? Here you have a grown man almost crying to you that he's got stuck with $100,000 worth of product that a family member screwed him with, right? So I was like, all right, I'll help you out. I'm going to make money, but I'll help you out, right? So anyways, we unloaded all the stuff, and as he started running out of parts, we started making all the changes on the stuff, like better, right? So, failure, make it better. Failure, make it better. And that was our first part. So we made turbo manifolds back in the day. And then in 2003, we started.
How many guys did you have at that point?
Not a lot. Like my shop was always like when we used to work on a lot of cars. There was there was like 4 to 5 guys, and then always a lot of help at night from the guys that I used to build their race cars for. It was always a lending hand. You know, a couple of my friends were very strong, and like when the electronic shit was coming out, they would help me on that end. I was like, I'd work on this. You know, I'll go build a motor. You go do that for me. And so it was always like on average like 4 or 5 guys. You know, I'm all about efficiency too, right? So you know, it's if it doesn't work out, then it's not worth doing it. You know, in our slow season, we build motors, we build trannies. In our good seasons, when everybody needs motors and trannies, they were ready to sell. You know, so it was always smart that way to make money, you know, off season versus laying my guys off. I always kept them employed because it's hard to find good guys.
Build stuff in the slow season so you can sell it when it's
exactly
busy. So you'd have it in stock on the shelf.
Exactly, yeah. So anything, if we could project something, and it always came down to money. How much money do you have? How much money do you need to carry you through for 6 months? Right, so you know, I think it's the hardest part of business is you know, you got a handful of money, and it's like, what are you going to do with it? And will you see that return, you know, back, or you're going to have to, you know, basically give the stuff away after to get your money to pay bills. So there's a lot of math involved, right? When you know, having your own company and business and stuff.
So John, when you're deciding to buy machines, I just asked this question to Brian actually.
Right.
When you're trying to decide whether to bring some machining or some manufacturing in-house,
right,
how do you make that leap? And if you're about to invest, say, $100,000 into a piece of equipment,
right,
when do you allow yourself, or when do you say that that's a good idea? As far as, do I need to pay this back in 2 years or 3 years? Like, how do you make that leap? What do you say is a good idea versus a bad idea? Like, when do you make that decision?
Well, I think everybody looks at it different. The way I look at it is if I can get it made. Now let's just pick an A part. You know, it costs you $100 to make. So I'm paying someone $100 for it. I got to bring it in. I got to, you know, do some more stuff to it, put it in a box, and then turn around and sell it. So if I look at it like, hey, I can make that part for $50, right? I got to look at, okay, what's my investment to make that part? Well, let's say I need a welder, but it's not a good example because most shops have welders. I think that's one of their biggest purchases, that and a hoist. But let's say you need a bandsaw. You know, everyone's got a chop saw, but now I need a bandsaw to cut these straight every time. So you kind of like, okay, I'm going to outlay $6,000 on a bandsaw. Okay, how many of those parts am I going to make? So now you got to take those parts and you got to say, okay, for the next 2 years, I'm going to sell these many parts, and I got to divide that $6,000 into these, you know, into these parts, and figure out how much it's going to cost me, right, per part, by me doing it myself, plus labor, plus electricity, plus that location of area that you're using, which is real estate, right, which we're all paying for in rent, unless you have a shop in your backyard and you don't care, but that's still money. You got to figure that out, and then you got to figure out, okay, 2 years, project didn't work out. What is that piece of equipment worth? So if you bought it for, you know, say $6,000 and used all day long, that equipment's worth like, you know, $4,000, then you lost $2,000. Is it worth the $2,000 over the, you know, the 1,000 units? Because 1,000 units, $6,000, you know, or $2,000. It's easy to do the math on that, right? What it actually cost you, or are all those things all day long worth, you know, $5,500? You know, then you got to kind of look at, okay, with $5,500 or $6,000, do I need that to put product on my shelves? Can I turn around inventory quicker than I can make those parts? So it's kind of like, where's the money going? You know what I mean? So that's where you gotta. That's why I look at it always. Like when I have money, what am I doing? Where am I investing? You know, where's the roadblock going to be down the road? Like in 6 months, am I going to look at going, I want to go into this avenue? You know what I mean? Of like a small product or whatever category that we're going to make, and I'm going to need like say, I don't know, $50,000. If I'm spending it now, and it's going to take a while for that product to take off, I'm going to be out $50,000 for you know, like a year. So I look at it that way. To me, it's a lot of basic math, you know what I mean, versus I want to be able to say I made it in-house. Well, that's great. Now your $100 part just turned into $150, right? And now there's, you know, I heard one time a company that bought 2 CNC machines. They're like, you know what, we're going to make everything in-house. We're going to do all this. And it's like, okay, other than somebody that knew how to draw, no experience on you know, operating a machine. Like guys think, oh, I'm going to buy a CNC machine and it's cheap. I can get a used one, $30,000. Okay, well, there's $30,000. Now you got to throw electrical. There's another $5,000. So it's $35,000. Generally, for
then $30,000 in tooling.
That's what I was going to say. Is usually whatever the cost of your machine is, double it up for tooling. And now cross your fingers that whoever's operating that machine does not crash it.
Yeah.
Because if you crash that machine and you smoke the spindle, you're done. It's like that's where all the money comes. So now it's kind of like, is it worth it? Now you're going to spend $60,000. Like you got to look at where's the problem. If you can't keep up, or if you can't trust somebody who's doing it, you know, like that's why guys go into business. Like manufacturers are manufacturers for a reason. They're good at what they do. You know what I mean? I'm good at coming up with concepts and ideas and this and that. But I know that, you know, certain people that machine stuff, they'll tell me and go, listen, can you move that hole over like 200 thou? You know what I mean? I'll look at it like, why? He goes, because I just saved you $3 in that part. And we're going to make, you know, 1,000 of them. So that's $3,000 I just saved you.
Yep.
And he doesn't want to make that hole because he just knows it's wrong, right? He needs to move that hole over. Whereas I wouldn't know that. And I'd get my guys to make that part all day long. You know what I mean? Or what I always hear, like, because I spend a lot of time talking to people that are manufacturers, just picking their brain and shooting the breeze or whatever. The biggest complaint I always heard is about engineers. Now, I have a lot of respect for engineers because I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit there and learn what they learn. I just don't have the focus for it. But what they should do, this should be a mandatory thing for engineers. You need to go to school for however long it takes to be, you know, like say in our field or whatever. And guess what? Before we give you that license, you're going to work in a machine shop and you're going to be a programmer for 2 years. Because that guy would be worth double his money. Because here you are drilling a 1/4-28 tapped hole, okay, into a plate, and that engineer is going to make it 1.5 inches deep. You just turn, you know, like a, I don't know, $1 hole or whatever into a $1,000 hole. Because how many taps are you going to break trying to tap that hole?
Sure.
And you know, if you know, I'm not saying because I don't know your background fully, but if you know on, you know how it works with threads and this and that, usually it's thread and a half. You know what I mean? Like basically, you're with it, your thread 0.5.
Depth times, you're talking about diameter of the bolt.
Exactly. Time, you know, 1.5. That's it. Anywhere than that, you're doing nothing.
1.5 times the diameter.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. Nothing's going on there, right? And this is all stuff I learned from being in business versus, you know, if I'd gone to school as a, you know, an engineer, I would have probably learned all that, you know, in theory, right? And wouldn't understand why, but I understand why. Is that I only have so much space, only so much real estate on this part. I can only go this deep. So then you start thinking torque. You start thinking, okay, I don't have that 1.5 inches. I have like or 1.5. So let's take a 10 mil bolt, right? So I got to go in 15 millimeters deep, but I don't have that area because my flange is only 10 millimeters. So I'm kind of looking at it like I don't have that space. So can I cheat? So now you start thinking, how much torque do I need to put on there? You know, is there other ways around it? So as an engineer, he'll say, never going to work, no good. In my book here, it says you can't do that, right? So us as car guys, we know we've done it. It works. We can do it. You know, a little Loctite, it works, right? So you gotta kind of know both ends, right? And
right. So in theory and in practical application.
Exactly. Yeah. So and then that's where I feel like, you know, I'll see, you know, a good friend of mine that does most of our machining. He gets drawings all the time, and he just laughs at these guys. And he's like, you know, can I change this? Can I change that? You know, because this is all wrong, right? It's gonna, like, I can make this part $100 less for you. And they're like, okay, that's fine. And you know, funny enough, some of the stuff goes on the moon. So seriously, he does some pretty crazy stuff, right? So, but yes, you just get some new guys that they're really good in the theory, and then you know, mathematic formula and stuff. But it's just like, in theory, just doesn't, you know, it works, but it doesn't work when you actually go to do it.
What it's all about is partnerships and knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Basically,
and finding the people that are good at that shit so that you can do what you're good at.
Yeah, like if you're working with somebody, Reed, that is like, if you're getting a guy to make something for you, he just can't get it right, doesn't mean that you have to start making it yourself. Go find somebody else. Because there's 100 other guys. If a guy's building a motor for you and you're just having bad luck, but your buddy's got another guy to build a motor for you, you got to look, and he's not having issues, you're looking at, is that guy who's building the motor wrong guy, or is it my tuner? You know what I mean? You got to look at it that way. You can't look at it, well, I'm going to start building my own motors. Now, if you go to 10 engine guys and they all build your motors and it's a crapshoot, then you know what? You know, get out a book and start learning how to build motors. Or find a different tuner or whatever, right? But that's my philosophy, right? Doesn't mean I'm right, but...
Word. John, when you doubt yourself and you think, like, what if this doesn't work? How do you overcome that feeling and move forward?
That's every part. Every part I put doubt into it, because when I create doubt, I create opportunity for someone to knock my part off. So if I doubt that, that should be okay, or maybe not, or whatever, and I'm just going to leave it like that, I really got to think it over. I really got to leave, like, you know, am I doing that right? You know what I mean? Like, if not, someone else is going to come make it better, right? Which is the biggest problem, right? If they're showing you up, you know, oh, that looks good, but look at mine. It's like, shit, you know?
So how do you deal with knockoff parts? What do you do about that?
buy a gun.
What have you done in the past? And go hunting?
No, like lately it's brutal. You know, like it's, I don't know, man. It's disappointing. It's like, it's just part of the job that you don't want. You know, it's all cool. Like you're building a car and you see somebody does something like something crazy on their front end. You go do the same thing. Well, you know what? Hopefully the guy got the props that he did it first and people will remember it, right? But that's one thing. But to mass produce, what a lot of people have to understand is we bang our heads against the wall trying to make shit at a good price for our customer, for our dealer. Our dealer to make some money to sell it to our customer, right? So R&D, like we do our exhausts in Taiwan. So I'll give you a step-by-step. So I borrow a car if I don't have a car, because if it's a newer car, I'm not going to buy it, right? So we just borrow it. That guy in the end is going to get a free exhaust. I'm going to get his car in a couple times. He's going to come in. I'm going to be all nice to him, whatever, put up with his day or whatever, because I got to borrow his car, right? So he's doing me a favor, right? So now I move along, get the car in the back. Nobody touched the car, nobody scratched the car because I don't want any problems, right? So now all of a sudden I'm involved at every point of this, because when we build an exhaust, I'm the guy who does it. Because I've done it for years and I feel like I'm good enough to do it, so I keep doing it. So anyways, get the car in, I kind of look at it, what can we do here, how are we going to do it, and then I start looking at, feasibility, to do it, bends, this and that, working with our suppliers in Asia. Are they going to get it wrong? If I do this, am I leaving, opportunity for them to screw it up? Right? So I think about that when I'm making stuff. I think about costs. I think about, how's it going to fail, if it's going to fail. And then you got to weigh out no one's going to want to spend an extra $50 on this part, so cross my fingers that this ain't going to be a problem, and it's not going to create a warranty issue for me down the road, and now it's money out of my pocket. You got to look at all that stuff, right? So, okay, we do that. We build an exhaust. I order a bunch of parts from Vibrant. That costs me a bunch of money. Or whoever I got to buy parts from, right? Build it raw. Set it up. Take notes. Whatever. Package it all up in a nice box. Put it in a box. $600 later, it lands in Taiwan. Taiwan makes a jig for it. They make a one-off piece. They send it back to me. I get Buddy's car back. Put it on the car. Test it all. Go, I screwed up here. I needed to fix this. All right, guess what? I got to change that. Or, hey, they did it exactly, the way they were supposed to, but I don't know what the hell they did here because my sample did not look like that. So now all of a sudden, fix it, put it back in the same box, ship it back. So now I've shipped it 3 times. That's $600 a pop. Yeah. So what are we at now? Bit of money, right? 2 G's.
Yep.
2 G's. I'm 2 days in the shop. So let's figure, shop time costs. If you go in to get your brakes done on a car, guy charges you $80 an hour, $100 an hour, right? So whatever. There's 2 of us working. So let's do $150 an hour there, because I always work with somebody else for opinion or hold this, hold that, grab me this. So $150 an hour. We spend 2 days there. You're talking
$2,400.
$2,400. What are we at now?
We're at $4,400. Plus or minus. Let's call it 20. Call it $2,200.
Okay, it's $2,200. So now all of a sudden,
excuse me, $4,200.
Yeah, calculate the 2. Yeah, $4,200.
$4,200.
Now I got it. Now I'm in between all this. I'm excited. I'm motivated. But yet at the same time, I'm kind of like, oh shit, these guys are selling it cheaper. These guys are selling it for more. Where are we going to fit? I don't want to cheap out on this. So because I'm getting it done in Taiwan, it costs me 20 to 30% more. So it's like, are we going to be able to make money? Like, I'll be honest with you, we make on an exhaust system about $100. It's not a lot of money when you think about. Now, when I tell you, if I order 100 exhaust systems, the first 50 are free. Like, basically, I made no money on them.
Yeah.
Because it's $100 an exhaust, right?
Yep.
So I got to sell 50, and it doesn't even cover anything, because that's that. Okay, now include the shipping, right? Include the freebie to Buddy in his car. Include any other bullshit I got to deal with. So by the time out of 100 units, I sell 40. Guess what? I sold the first 100, I made $4,000. So you got to kind of look at it. Is it really worth it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I could go to China and get the same exhaust done for, almost half price sometimes. But then everyone...
So why don't you?
Because it's quality. It's just... It's very... Okay, the good companies in China that can manufacture good quality product are not doing stuff for us. It's all OE. If they get to the point where they're really... And I've seen those companies. And if they're really, really good, if you ain't ordering 5,000 units at a time, they're not talking to you.
Right.
So
quantity is a huge problem with this industry, because everything's so niche. Trying to get the volumes up high enough is a struggle.
Yeah, everything's numbers. And a lot of our stuff, because I like to critique my stuff. So after the first sample comes in and we're done and we're making them, I'm critiquing it already. I'm already making changes. It costs me more money, because now all of a sudden it's like parts don't interchange with themselves. And I'm getting now into aluminum stuff, not really exhaust, but a lot of our CNC stuff. If you grabbed our one our one order, second order, third order, fourth order. This changes all the way through because I'm at our machine shop twice a week, right? Sometimes 3 times a week. And we're constantly go, let's change this, let's tweak that, let's do that. Well, we scrap a lot of stuff because of that. Because whenever, like our shifter, I don't know, I think there's like 30 parts to make one of our shifters. They don't tie into each other anymore. So now all of a sudden, when you make, let's say we make 500 shifters, it's 500 parts times 30. Well, you never make 500 parts. You make 520. You make 480. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
It's just we order the material, make it all. You know what I mean? Just do it all. And a lot of stuff gets thrown out because of that, but we're always trying to make it better. Like we'll buy it, we'll make it, we'll test it, everything's great. We'll give it to a couple guys, no issues. We'll give it to another guy, he's got a problem. So then you're like, okay. All right, well, you got to change that, right? And now you got to know, look out for this. If you got a warranty problem with it, take care of the customer. So that's money, right? But at the same time, if I help you, you're going to promote to another guy. I learned a long, long time ago. We had a traction bar that we sold to a customer. And this guy went on Honda Tech, and he thrashed. And I wasn't a Honda Tech guy. Like, I'm not really a forum guy because, again, grade 10 education, my grammar wasn't the greatest and wasn't good on, on a keyboard or whatever. So I just said, you know what, you deal with it. Well, the guys that I was getting to deal with it were basically, I guess the guy pissed them off and they didn't want to deal with him. Finally, I had to talk to the guy. And I talked to him on the phone. And I said, dude, I'm just going to send you a new traction bar. He goes, okay. He didn't think I was going to send him a traction bar. I was at a race in the U.S. He came up to me. He goes, hey, man, I'm so-and-so. And I remember the name right away. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? Like that, right? And I'm trying to now recap in my head everything. And he goes, I just wanted to say thank you. I was the guy on Honda Tech that thrashed you guys about your traction bar and everything. And I talked to you on the phone. And I just want to say thank you for sending me that traction bar because you said you were. And after I thrashed you, I didn't think you were going to. And you did. And I'm like, well, I told you I was going to. Because really, right. After he had ran my name through the dirt, you know what I mean? Because we wouldn't do anything. Because it's just the problem is if you're going to run somebody's name through the dirt, let them give you a reason first. Like try to work with them first. Like we don't all get it right at the beginning. You know what I mean? We're making products, right? And the reason why is because we're not making OEM Honda parts where there's tons of engineering behind it and lab testing and all this and whatever. Nobody wants to pay $3,000 for a shifter, right? They want to pay $500, $400, $300, whatever. Well, with that, it means you're taking shortcuts, right? And so you got to work with people like this broke. As long as the customer is there to say, the customer is willing to call you to say, I got a problem with this. Can you guys do anything? I know it's out of warranty or whatever. Can you do something? As long as you're there to go, I'll help you out with either a new part or give them a deal or whatever, then you're doing good, But that's the one thing with, I would say, with manufacturing. If you're looking at doing something like this, you've got to back your product. You know what I mean? You got to take it because you know what? You're going to have problems. Everybody does. Everybody.
Did you guys make a conscious decision to get away from service and become a manufacturer?
We just didn't have time for it. We were getting a lot of guys wanted to come to us because they're like, well, if you make the parts, you must know what you're doing. So they would come to us to either build stuff for them or just put an engine in with a full swap.
But was there a day that you're like, we're not doing service anymore?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah.
Last year we moved. We went from we moved into our old facility was 4,300 square feet. It was a bit of a dive of an area. We did that just because of our dyno, that we could run the dyno during the day, so we had to be in a crappy area. We moved from there to our new facility, which is the bomb, really nice area. Yanked the dyno, said we're not, we couldn't get a good area with having a dyno, so we said forget it, we're not going to do a dyno. We took this area. We moved from 4,300 square feet into 11,000 square feet, and we were like, wow, where did we have all this stuff? Because we're just well organized. But we were like, we can't work on cars anymore here. Like in our area that we're in, our landlord is basically like, you guys can't run a mechanic shop here. And kind of what you're doing is kind of like a mechanic shop. So they basically made us, sign on the dotted line that we would only do testing and this and that. And that was it. So there's a big chunk of change that we said, see you later to. But for us, it's just like, let's focus on other things. And just recently, we just picked up another 4,000 square feet. So we're almost at 15,000 square feet now.
And all for manufacturing and inventory storage?
Okay, so mainly inventory storage. So our machine shop, which is about half an hour away from here, if you know the area, it's a big hub for manufacturing. It's called Mississauga. Our machine shop, and I would say we because the 75% of the products that they make are our products now, and it's just kind of grown over the years. But it's not my company. We got a lot of skin in the game in that shop, but It's not owned by us. We have 17 CNC machines there, 2 shifts we run. So if you can imagine the product that we're able to produce there, a lot of stuff. Here in the shop, the only thing we do is light assembly. We do welding here. I do one-off stuff here on my mill and my lathe. If I'm developing a part or if I'm changing something, I'll do that. As much as I like AutoCAD or SolidWorks or whatever, that to me is all French. I don't understand any of it. Like when I develop a part, it's usually on my Bridgeport or on my lathe with a motor, making sure it works. I get the meat and potatoes out of it. I grab the part. I go to the machine shop. I sit down with one of the designers. We design the part real quick. I tell them exactly what I want because I'm very visual. We knock it out in about a day or two. Like to give you an example, our RSX shifter, which we did 5 years ago, was probably about 30 cartons of cigarettes and a week's worth of work. And I didn't smoke back then. And by the time we finished that thing, I started smoking. Because the guy that I was working with, Peter, which is my buddy, he's like the bomb on on AutoCAD and SolidWorks, and he just smokes. The guy's like just chain smoker. So I had stopped smoking for 6 years, and one day I just said, "Give me a smoke, man." And I started smoking. So I quit now, but there's just so much time involved. But I don't have the patience to sit there and develop and draw stuff. And I'm the problem solver guy. Like I can look at something and say that's going to be a problem, but that's not going to work. And now manufacturing, being around it so much, like most guys, if they're around it, they're going to get it. If you're a hands-on guy, I know how not to make a part, at a cost point or whatever, where failure is going to kind of be just by being around it so much. And developing a lot of product with Vibrant when I worked for them too. I was around a lot of manufacturing, and you just learned a lot, right? So I've been lucky. I've been lucky to be around the right people and stuff to learn all this stuff.
So John, you guys make a lot of parts. You had quite a journey from ETD to kind of what you're doing now, first doing show cars and then race cars and then service and now manufacturing. What's your big, hairy, audacious goal for K-Tuned?
I think we're going to...
Where do you see it in 10 years?
I think we're going to continue the brand, right? Like, what I always joked, and, my friends say, 10 more years of this and, you'll be set and this and that and whatever. And I started believing it. And then you look at your employees that you have that have been with you, for a long time. I believe in keeping my employees, take care of them and stuff. And they're more like family. You see them every day. You spend more time with them than you do with your family at the end of the day, right? So, treat them good and they'll treat you good. So I started looking at it like 10 years. But what are these guys going to do in 10 years? I'm going to leave them high and dry. They helped me for 10 years. Now I'm walking away from them. So my outlook changed. So I was like, you know what? I think in 10 years I'll maybe take it a little easier. Maybe it'll be 20 years I'll take it a little easier. What I want to do for K-Tunes, just keep growing it, keep filling that void and coming out with stuff that we think is innovative and cool and, our customers want, or there might be a demand for in the future. Personally, I have a passion for cars. I always have. I love cars. I got a bit of a collection of Hondas and stuff, and one that I don't have is a road race car. So I think in the next couple of years we're probably going to build a road race car, and I want to go road racing. So I think for me that's going to be my, kind of get away as I start getting burnt out and, recharge my batteries.
Yeah. Do you have the desire to get into other markets? Do you ever have the thought that you're missing out on other opportunities by staying so focused on K-Series stuff? Okay. Like, does that keep you up at night? Well, or are you sure that you're doing the right thing by staying focused and keeping your brand true to what it is?
Well, a couple years, about 5 years ago, we had a company that was considering us to create a brand with them for Porsche products because there's so much money in it. Like, that exhaust that, I said, we get done in Taiwan, you could almost get a Porsche exhaust done for it. The exhaust that we sell would be like a $650 exhaust. If it was a Porsche exhaust, it's $5,000, $3,000. It's almost the same cost, right? The difference is you're not going to sell as many, right? So your numbers are limited because not everyone has a Porsche versus a Honda Civic. And usually if you own a Porsche, sometimes those guys that own the Porsche just own the Porsche. That's it. You know what I mean? Just enough money for gas and that's it. But they're the guys that have money and they will spend. But with that comes you got to wine and dine these guys. You got to take them out to dinner. It's like that really good-looking girl that just won't give it up. You just got to constantly take her out, and then eventually it's just like, okay, I'm in, right? So, well,
right.
The same deal with cars. Like, you got a Porsche guy, he's got this money in his hand, cash, ready to spend it, and it's like, yeah, but who's got the biggest balls out there? You know what I mean? So, oh, wow, look at this guy's website. Oh, wow, look at this guy, and he hangs out with him and this and that. So all of a sudden your marketing budget that goes from, like, say, $100,000, you got a Porsche program, it's $500,000.
Right. So it's just whoever can flex the most.
Yeah, basically. And there is so much garbage out there. Like, I look at this stuff and I'm like, are you for real? Like, you charge you how much for this? When we looked at doing that with that company, we kind of looked at branding it as our own. And I looked at, you know, the ethics of how you had to do business. And I was just like, that's no fun. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be one of those guys. I'll sell Honda parts all day. Because at least those guys, I go to a show, and it's so cool to have guys come up and say, they won't necessarily say it to me, the old guy, but they'll go to one of my guys and say, I love you guys, man. I love your product, and you guys are, I just want to thank you, and this and that. It makes you feel good, right? This guy with a Porsche is coming up. He's like, yeah, I got $100,000 to spend. Well, you guys make anything for suspension? You know, that's like $50,000. It's like, no, well, everything you make's garbage then. I'm going somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's like...
It's just not fun.
No, I don't deal with those guys, right? I don't like dealing with people with lots of money, especially if they show that they have lots of money.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, that's just not us, you know. That's not.
No, we're grassroots. We're whatever. We were car guys. We like cars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, I like imports. I like domestics. If it's a badass car, it sounds good. It could be a car I don't even like, but if it sounds good, I'll say, man, that car sounds crazy. You know, it could be like whatever, a Fiat with a crazy mod to it.
Right.
But
so tell our listeners something that will help them. Do you have anything that you could suggest to our listeners for them to do this week to help them improve their situation?
You know what? And think about it. Before you make rash decisions on your business, think about it. Or, you know, it's always good to have mentors. I always looked up to guys. What are you doing? How are you doing it? You know what I mean? And look at their stresses. Like, wow, you know what? He's doing well, but that guy's stressed. I don't want that. You know, because with glory comes all the pain. You know what I mean? Like, just think about stuff before you do it. Like, if you're doing that, and like, again, topic on knockoffs, just because today, you know, just found out another one of our parts were knocked off, but don't knock people's shit off. It's just not cool. You're gonna be known as the guy who knocks off people's shit. You know, just be original. Even if you got a bone to pick with somebody, you know what I mean? You're like, oh, I'm gonna make it, and I'm gonna make it cheaper because he's an asshole. Who's gonna win there? Nobody. Nobody's gonna win, right? Yeah. So just, you know, if you think long and hard enough, you will come up with your own idea. You will find that strength that will make your company go. And honestly, honesty is the best. Like, we're not big here on, like I tell my guys, don't take money unless you have the product. If a guy wants to leave a deposit, really try not to, because I don't like leaving deposits. You know, take the risk that we don't have the product. That's our own fault. He's going to spend the money somewhere else. Don't take their money. If you have to rely on building your company on your customers' money before, you know, like if you got a $1,000 job to do and you're like, I need the money up front, then it's just not cool. You can't do it. Do a 50-50. If you're going to do a job on a car, like if you're working on a guy's car, half up front, unless you're buying parts. Get the money for the parts because the parts are there and they're his, right? And get half on the labor. And now you're on the hook for the rest of the half. Until he picks up his car, you don't have that money. But you're going to finish that job to get the other half of your money. That's how you will succeed. And another thing is people never understand, shop owners, on how much money it really costs to build someone's car that they're billing for. One thing I learned years ago from watching somebody do it is they took a basic piece of paper and they took one of those clear envelopes and they put it on the windshield of a car with tape on it. And every time they put a part in that car, they wrote it down. If they went and worked on that car for 2-3 hours as a part came in, they wrote down 3 hours, did this. When your customer comes in and he says to you, hey, what's my bill, man? Oh, that's $4,000. Oh, my God, $4,000. You said it was going to be around $2,000. Yeah, but remember that conversation we had where you said, oh, throw this in, throw that in, throw this in. If you look at this piece of paper, see here, that. As soon as your customer sees why you're charging him, how much, he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. I got it. You know what I mean? Like, if you make him feel better by understanding what's going on, he's going to pay it. He's got no problem. But if you say, well, you know, now you're both like angry at each other and, well, I did the job and, you know, this and that and whatever, and you said you're going to pay. And it's like, communication is really big. But if you have that piece of paper there to say, this is the material, this is the time, you added this on this day, took me this much longer to do it, that's it. That's the one advice. I started making more money when I ran a shop when I did that. It was just easier and you miss stuff all the time. Like, you shortchange yourself. Like, your customer doesn't mind paying for it as long as he knows what he's paying for. But,
right.
If you're sitting at a restaurant and you order a meal and you're getting charged for, like soup, but you didn't have soup. But if he can show you, hey, buddy, here's your soup, you know what I mean? I dropped it off to you and you ate it. Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. I had that soup. I didn't like it, but yeah, I ordered it.
Yeah,
whatever, right? So
right, it's just trying to illustrate like where the money went. So it's not just $4,000 for all this. It's $4,000 itemized like this. Boom, 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 boom,
basic.
boom.
The more complicated you make it, you're never going to do it. If you dumb it down, you'll grow into it. And it's almost like it's a basic accounting. If you're going to be the guy to say, yeah, that's a great idea, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it at the end of the job, you lose, man. It's not going to work. Just do it every time. If you do my little thing that I do, which is that clear folder on top of the windshield, you just have a pen on the wiper, you just pull that paper up, you add on it, you push the paper back in, you're done. And you tell your guys, if you go grab a screw that you pay 50 cents for and you use 8 screws in there, that's $4. Well, why shouldn't the customer pay for it? You paid for it. And mark it up a little bit, make your 30% on it, right? Because you had to take money out of your pocket to buy, 30 of those screws to put, in a box that you might use one day. You got to make money on it. Don't feel bad, because that's the whole idea is when you're slow that week and you're making no money, that 30% profit comes into play now because you're covering that week and you're making no money. And that's the week you should be working on your car.
There you go.
So that's the advice I can give, guys.
Appreciate it. John, we've made it all the way to quick answer questions. I'm going to fire this shit off at you. You fire it right back.
Sure.
Fair enough?
Sure.
Tell us about a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
That I make or that somebody else makes or?
Shameless plug away, my friend.
You know what? And I don't want to use this to promote our product. Most guys would, but I'm kind of like, whatever. So maybe I'll think of something else. Again, in my head, it's always stuff that we're working on, not that what someone else has done. I know there's probably stuff that I just can't think of that I've seen and been like, that's cool. But a while ago I saw something where the new technology is getting rid of cams and you're basically your valves are going to work off air, which I thought that was just crazy.
Yeah.
No more guys trying to say my cams are bigger than yours, or better or whatever, right? So now it's going to be like I pump more air than you do, which they're doing already. So
yeah, that'll be interesting to see if that ever trickles down into.
I think it's going to be a long time, but it's all about technology. You look at the cars now and all the technology behind them. How it's just crazy. It's crazy what's going on.
What software program are you using on a daily basis?
BlackBerry, because I'm always on my BlackBerry.
BlackBerry, they still making those things?
Yeah, and that's usually the joke, right? And you know what it is for me? I'm like, okay, where am I going? Samsung? Am I going iPhone? And then some guys complain. They'll be like, oh, I got the iPhone, but as soon as I didn't like it and I wanted to go here, they locked all my contacts, and I couldn't move everything over. So now I'm staying with them. So I talked to my Samsung buddies, and they're like, yeah, it was good for the first year, but now I'm having problems. And I'm like, you know what? BlackBerry, pretty much you got a problem from day one. I'm used to it now, so I'm like, until I can find that really good, basically phone, which I use for everything. The only thing I can say about BlackBerry is it's very secure, but it's that's about it, really. That's the only thing I'll say about it. Everything else is
all right.
Everything else is hard to deal with. Other than that, we use a lot of SolidWorks for drawings and stuff, so that's constantly in my face.
So you use SolidWorks, but what about a shop tool? Do you have reverse engineering hardware there in-house? Do you guys do that there?
The only thing we have for reverse engineering here would be a micrometer.
Okay.
Yeah, I really don't. That shit's expensive unless you're copying other people's products. Sometimes it's really not needed. I know certain people that have it, so if I'm in a jam, there's companies I can go to and say, here, charge me up my ass because there's so many there's nowhere to start measuring from, right? So you just give it to them, they'll measure it for you. But other than that, most of the stuff, if we need it, we just worked on a project last week where we needed 10 pickup points. We just put it up on our Bridgeport, and you can pick up the points basically to know where they are, and then you start your drawings from there. So we kind of do it the old way of doing it versus a lot of guys are using, like the arms and the scanners and shit like that. But I don't really get into any of that.
Got it. What's your favorite shop tool?
I don't know, man. Honestly, I know whenever I'm making something, I use my hand grinder, my hand chop saw all the time. Like when I say chop saw, it's a grinder I convert to, a cutting blade or whatever. Welding, I weld a lot. Even some prototypes I'll weld them up and whatever. But I don't know, man. I don't really have anything that's kind of,
Nothing that's blowing your mind.
No, not really at all.
Fair enough.
I try to keep stuff as basic as possible and make it work. Yeah, like I look at some of the products that people are making, and I see all their tool, reverse engineering type, let's say, product, that they're Xerox machines, and I'm just like, yeah, it's great. I guess probably it's because I wouldn't know where to use it. You know what I mean? How to use it so I don't buy it. You know what I mean? I guess maybe that's why, but I can see in some cases where it would be good to use that. Gotcha.
No, it seems like you guys have made some pretty serious and pretty sick products. And to hear that you're doing it, kind of the old-fashioned ways, it's kind of inspiring. I don't know. It's exciting because, it says that anything's possible.
You know what it says? Anybody can do it. If you have drive, you know what I mean? And we see it every day. When you go, like I'm a drag race guy, right? So I like to go to the track, and I see these guys, what they do, and I'm like, that's a product. You know what I mean? Like, that guy doesn't know, but that's a product. He could make that, reproduce, and guys would buy it. But you're like, he's just happy making onesie, twosie, for his cars when he does them. And that's it. But there's so many great ideas out there. Some guys bank on it, commercialize it, and make money. I always like to say, hey, this guy here, I got the idea from him. The first guy to say, like the other day, it's funny enough, we just did a T-shirt the other day. And the guy that I get to do my T-shirts, a buddy of mine, and he's got a little company. It's called Scooter Media. And he had done this cool T-shirt that was like a watch, and it was just kind of cool. And we were trying to come up with a T-shirt. And I said, you know what, Scott, I got nothing. Why don't we use your watch idea? And he goes, okay. He doesn't care, right? So he took everything that was his out of it and put everything that was I wanted on there and put it on there. And I looked at it and I thought, that's cool. But I know in the back of his mind, he's like, that's mine. You know what I mean? So I said, Scott, do me a favor. In that little spot right there where it looks like it's missing something, put your logo in it. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Who cares? You know what I mean? You know it's there. You're going to point it out. No one else may not know what it is, but I'm like, why not? Why not give him his 1 minute of fame? You know what I mean? For that.
For sure.
Maybe get some work out of it down the road, right? Like, we all got to eat. We all got to share. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to help people out, and that's what this industry is about, right?
It's about doing it, kind of helping other people and not at the expense of everybody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not about, I'm going to win, so you have to lose.
Exactly.
Well, hey, John, what's the future of automotive performance? Like, how do you see it in the next 5 years?
Well, I'll tell you how I saw it 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I thought we're all screwed. I saw all this drive-by-wire coming out. I saw all this crazy stuff, and everything sensors, this, that, whatever, and I thought, we're all screwed. But then technology, we learned how to figure it out. We've learned how to get in there and hack into everything. And then when we learned that, we used it to our advantage. So all of a sudden, like drive-by-wire, guys, everyone was like, what the hell is this? You know what I mean? Where's my cable? You know what I mean? I went off, I went on. As soon as I play with it, my throttle doesn't work anymore. Well, we start playing with software, and now it's like, hey, I'm road coursing. I need to open and close my throttle. I can get my computer to control that in the way that I want to. So they basically took a negative and turned it into a positive. So quickly I learned that, you know what, even though they're screwing everything up for us, we just got to follow it and just kind of, with, like I always say, with every problem, there's a solution. With every solution, there's a product. So, you know what, there's more stuff coming out, but I don't think it's ever going to go away. From the first day they built the second car, you know what I mean? It was like there was a race. So everybody wants to go fast. So I think
that's never going away.
No, like you always need a race. So I think they're always, even if it changes down the road to 99% electric, will always be that 1% gas. We will find that they're making it for us. There it is. We're going to go play over there.
Word. John, so how do we connect with you and K-Tune?
We're pretty simple. Just our website, just www.k-tune.com. And that's really it. Any help you guys need, call my guys, even if it's not one of our parts. If it's related to what we do, my guys are well knowledge. They'll help you out, even if it's someone else's part or whatever. We just want to kind of get you going. My philosophy is, if your car runs, you will motivate somebody else to build their car. If your car's in the garage and shit don't work, you're going to hate us, and you're going to hate the industry, and you're going to go buy a skateboard. So we need motors on our four wheels.
Nice. Hey, John, thanks a lot for taking some time and kind of giving us the history of K-Tune and what you're about, and giving us some action items and some things to do to kind of help move us forward. Appreciate the input,
cool.
My friend.
Thanks a lot, Reed. Appreciate the time that you guys gave me.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks again, man.
Talk soon.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app. Tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.